second part is about reporting, mainly configuration changes and end-user reporting. So the last point, what do we show our users? We do not show all. First things first, Nagios. Everyone knows Nagios. We have Nagios too. About escalation levels. We also work best effort. That means 9-5 a week. And outside of those office times, working is voluntarily. As Michele said, we do work at the weekend, but it's really voluntary. If I have time, I look into a problem, and if you don't have, I do not have to. That's quite a freedom. We once had a broken, what was it, submit node at weekend, and I had no time. Okay, let's fix it on Monday. That's our definition of best effort. 95% of our checks are email-based, so we simply get an email and that's all. And on this category of alerts, we see compute nodes down. I do not bother if one compute node or two compute nodes are down. So that's something that you can fix on Monday or the next day. Also, disk space issues. So the main part, when I want to be alerted by SMS, is mainly if users cannot do their jobs. And that's not true for when one compute node is down, so I do not have to react. But for instance, if the GPS file system is down, then we have a problem. So therefore, these checks are done with SMS to the administrators. Or for instance, front-end server down, users cannot log in and submit their jobs. That's really an emergency that you have to fix now, but not in the night. Alerts are sent to our 3 UBELIX admins, only 3. At least one is always working. Actually, we try to do that this way. The pros and cons of Nagios. I know there are better monitoring tools, but for us it's simple and it works. That's really important and it's enough for us. We also use Ganglia, and there is an interface between those two, but we don't use it yet. When I started working for UBELIX 1.5 years ago, I've seen that. Well, there would be an interface between those two tools, but still we haven't changed that because, from my perspective, this is not a high priority task, so we left it as it was. And the other good thing about Nagios, you can set up checks automatically. For instance, with Puppet, if you declare that a certain compute node has a certain service running, for me at least, it's good if Puppet then automatically sets up the check in Nagios. I do not want to always configure checks for new nodes. We are not yet there, but we wanted to have it this way. Cons regarding Nagios, mass changing settings is quite tedious. For instance, in the maintenance down where you have to silence all checks, because I do not want to turn off the Nagios, because I want to see when hosts are up again. So that's quite tedious, and it's not multi-tenancy capable. For instance, if we want to have some users that can influence checks, that's not possible currently, at least not easy doable. So I'd like to hear more about Isinga 2. There's a presentation about that. Regarding performance, we use Ganglia. It's quite a good tool, not only to have the history, where you can look back what has happened. I use it also as a first tool to discover problems. So meanwhile, when I look at the curves, I can see, oh, we are running into an I/O problem in the storage. Then I can react and suspend some jobs that are highly file I/O intensive. And meanwhile, we have, for instance, one public server. I know when the 1 minute load is above 30, they really have problems using it because they are using it interactively. So those are, how do we call that in English, Erfahrungswerte.
Based on experience?
Yeah, based on experience to read those curves. And I think it's a really good tool, actually. It doesn't look that fancy, but that's not the major point here. That's a detailed view of what we have and what we measure. And the most important values are the load and the network I/O. Those are the two values that I use most of the time. And then memory usage. There's another fancy tool from the infrastructure group. That's not our tool. They call it the weather map, where you can see network traffic visualized, where you have which traffic from which rack to which rack. For instance, in the second, in the right image, you can see that VDX 45 has a lot of traffic from and to the storage, apparently, GPFS 1, 2, and 4. And this information, as a global view, is also valuable for us. It helps discovering the jobs, so on which nodes jobs that have a high file I/O are placed currently. Then the topic end-to-end monitoring. We do not do end-to-end monitoring, but we use it. This is the page from the NGI monitoring, and for us this is quite valuable. I'm missing the automatically alerts, but every once and then I look at this page, or when we suspect problems with our arc-CE, and actually end-to-end monitoring, that means submitting a job and looking if it ran successful, is actually quite helpful, as I like this tool. That's our arc-CE monitoring, and that's it. So reporting regarding configuration changes. We currently use Red Hat Linux and therefore have a satellite running, and this is an example of a difference between configuration setup and the location, the configuration actually found on the node. For instance, here we have a difference in the file mode. It's expected to be 755, but actually it's 700. Satellite server works in a, let's say, checking mode. It doesn't ensure that the setting is correct. It does only report differences about how it should be and how it is. As we are currently moving to CentOS, we can't use, or we do not want to use satellite anymore, and we will switch to this tool, Puppet Enterprise. So it's not clear if we take Puppet Enterprise or the form, but this is a screenshot where we can see this was a Puppet run on the 24th of September, and we can see that the file mode for the SSH known hosts file has been changed from 600 to 644. So in contrast to the satellite server, the Puppet server enforces the configuration, and we can see after a Puppet run what has actually changed. And this helps to not only find differences between compute nodes, but also to be sure that the configuration currently deployed is as expected, as what we want it to be. It's quite helpful. Without such a tool, you always are diffing files between different hosts, mainly when you have made manual changes. So that's where we want to go to. And then regarding reporting towards the users, we use the grid engine, and the grid engine has a tool that visualizes the node usage. But we thought it's not that fancy, and we had an apprentice that had spare time. He did two things in our hpc environment. He set up the firewall cluster that we now have, active failover cluster. That's one thing. And the other thing is, he coded us a web application. And I'd like to show you the application now. Hopefully it matches the resolution. It's a responsive design, so we now have it from top to down. So this one is visible for our users. So we have things like current slot utilization, all queues combined. Users can, for instance, the parallel calculation jobs can look at the MPI queue. Oh, there are 42% occupied, so there's much room left for new jobs. We have queue availability. That's what Michele said. When one compute node has a problem and is not able to accept jobs, we make it visible. Here you can see you have 296 queue instances, and currently all are running as expected. Then we have some statistics about jobs, pending jobs currently. How many are pending? How many slots will they use? And we have a visualization. This is the slot usage last hour. And we can switch to, let's say, 24 hours. That's regarding the summary. Then we can have a look at the individual queue instances. Currently all are healthy, none alert, none disabled. And here you can see each queue instance and spot free slots, or have a look at the current, that's here, the current load. And the last view, currently running jobs or pending jobs. This takes some time. So this table is a bit large. So here you can see the job ID, the user, job name, how many slots are used for this job, and where it's currently running on. And it's a quite sophisticated table. You can, for instance, say I only want to see jobs for a given user, let's say Nordogrid, and I only want to see jobs currently running on, let's say, G0 19. Oh, there are none. Exactly. So here we have some. Or if we see, that's quite a funny thing. Currently we have one job using 164 cores. So this is the tool that our users can use to have an impression what's going on UBELIX, or to answer the question, are there free slots currently?
Are you querying the system with every action here, or are you?
Thanks for the technical question. We have, on the server side, we have a Ruby script that is calling the QStat to get the numbers, and it's crunching them and putting them into a MySQL DB. And this is done every minute. It's fast enough. We hold the data for 24 hours. Then it's purged. And this is a PHP with jQuery web application that only hits the database. And a lot of stuff is cached for 1 minute. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
So we like this tool, and it's fancy. So that was it from my side. Are there any questions?